Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video, we're going to be going over 8 more fun builds that are mostly build requests from you guys. We're going to start here with the short spear build. This is one that has been requested recently, and this one's a lot of fun to use. Now, damage-wise, Mesmer's Soldier Spear is going to give you a lot more damage for the 2 strikes, but it's a lot slower too. The short spear has the charge attack with the double hit. It's relatively quick, and it's easy to get status build up as well, which is why we put it in cold affinity for frost build up. I think one of the people that requested this weapon wanted it in keen affinity, but the thing is, keen affinity wise, there's so many other better weapons you could use. I think it's actually more underrated in cold affinity because it gets pretty decent scaling, around 500 AR, it's relatively quick on the charge attacks, does decent poise damage, and as we mentioned, the frost build up isn't bad either, making it a very versatile build, which you could use for a lot of different boss fights. It took me a second to get used to fighting Mesmer specifically, because he could be difficult overall, especially as you move along journeys. This is, I think, Journey 3. As far as Mesmer goes, he's got a lot in Phase 2 that you have to avoid. Phase 1 obviously went smoother. He's really quick in Phase 2, so it can be difficult getting off your charge attacks. So the best piece of advice I can give you when using a build like this one is to have a little bit of patience. I get beat up at the end here a bit, but yeah, be patient, wait for your windows, and in some cases, actually staying close to Mesmer can avoid some of his attacks, especially when he has those AoE flame attacks. They tend to hit you if you back off, and they become kind of an anti-heal thing, where if you back off, you'll get hit with the flame and you won't be able to heal. If you stay close to him, sometimes he'll either dodge away, or you could easily dodge his attacks and roll through them, and then heal when you find a window. Overall, I like the short spear. I think it's underrated in cold affinity. Definitely a build worth checking out. In a second here, we're going to go over equipment and stats. For equipment, we have the cold short spear, plus 25, preferably with Royal Knight's Resolve. Any seal for buffs, you can check out our unique armor set there. We have Melissen's Prosthesis, two-handed sword talisman, axe talisman, dagger talisman, and then we have the blood-sucking crack tier, spike crack tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on the short spear build, we have 60 vigor, 20 mind, 26 endurance, 14 strength, 60 dexterity, 20 intelligence. We have 25 faith, so we could use Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Blessing Spoon. And the next one on here is really stupid fun, and honestly, not even only stupid fun, it does a ton of damage. I haven't really used the Beastman's Cleaver much. A couple people asked for a build for this one. Apparently with roars, it's pretty phenomenal. You're going to see the damage I get here on Moog is actually incredible. 2 hits, by the way, was like 10,000 damage. Probably around 8 or 9, actually. But yeah, get a lot of damage with this, with our charged hits. And if he wasn't going into his Phase 2 transition, probably would have gotten a posture break there as well, because this weapon actually does a lot of poise damage too. Overall, really good in blood affinity. For those waiting, by the way, on the theme builds, as well as the high-level builds, they're going to be next week and possibly the week after. This upcoming week, though, I think I'm going to do the high-level builds. A lot of people are waiting for that video, so I'm going to be doing that one soon. Let's jump into equipment, stats, everything you need to know for a Beastman's Cleaver build. Let's jump into equipment now. And for equipment, we have the Beastman's Cleaver in blood affinity with Braggart's Roar, plus 25 preferably. Highland Axe for the passive, any seal for buffs, White Mask, Rakshasa set on, two-handed sword talisman, axe talisman. We have the Roar medallion. We have Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Spike Crack tier, Fate tier, and we were using Moog Shackle to stun the boss. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 vigor, 15 mind, 31 endurance, 40 strength. It's going to be 60 when you two-hand this, 14 dexterity, 15 faith, 25 with the faith tier, 45 arcane. Our buffs are Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength too. A popular weapon that's commented on my channel a lot that people ask for builds for is the Venomous Fang. I've done builds for this in the past, but there's something that you could do that's better now with the Venomous Fangs, and that's actually using the perfume bottle, the deadly poison one. You can actually proc Kindred of Rot's Exaltation prior to even going into a fight. You can pretty much do that for any build, but it works especially well for this build. And then putting in them in blood affinity, you're going to get poison, bleed, 40% damage buff between Lord of Blood's Exaltation and Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, ultimately making for a powerful Venomous Fang build that could chew through boss HP and does good percentage damage. Let's jump into equipment and stats. We have the Blood Venomous Fang with Royal Knight's Resolve. We have the Deadly Perfume Bottle. We have Any Steel for Buffs, White Mask, part of the Rakshasa set on Gaius' chest piece. Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, Millicent's Prosthesis, Wing Sword Insignia, or Rotten Wing Sword Insignia if you have it. Thorny Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. You could slow those down on YouTube if need be. I went through that one way too fast. 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 28 Endurance, 12 Strength, 45 Dexterity, 45 Arcane, Golden Vow, Flame Grip, and Strength. And the next one up here we have is the Frozen Grossmesser build. A couple people wanted to build for the Grossmesser because it's kind of an obscure weapon. It doesn't really excel at anything specifically other than cold affinity. Again, it has pretty good scaling ultimately. You can go with strength and intelligence or dex and intelligence for good AR. I think it leans a little bit more towards strength, but ultimately I was able to get a lot of frost build up and a good amount of damage going for cold affinity, one with chilling mist, and then the other one I gave myself an Ash of War in Wild Strikes. By the way, I want to mention real quick, there's a big video coming out tomorrow for New Game Plus 7 builds. It's going to be a lot of similar stuff, although they're optimized for New Game Plus 7. It's going to be in 4K. It's going to be awesome. Be sure to check out that video tomorrow. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be after this one. We have 2 Cold Grossmessers. We have 1 with Wild Strikes, 1 with Chilling Mist, Any Seal for Buffs. You need the Gravebird chest piece on, part of the Rakshasa set, Claw Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Millicent's Prosthesis, Wing Sword Insignia, or Rotten Wing Sword Insignia if you have it, Thorny Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. Yeah, definitely tune in for tomorrow's video. 60 Vigor, 40 Strength, 25 Dexterity, 40 Intelligence, 25 Faith, and then we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grip and Strength for our buffs. And of course, as always, we hit 51 poise. You could use the Raptor's Black Feathers too. And the next one up, somebody asked me to do a build for the Scimitar by itself. I decided to do it as a guard counter build. I actually have 2 guard counter builds, another one coming up in this video. The other one's a little better in my opinion, although this one's pretty good too. I like the brass shield. The other one, I think, just does more damage on your guard counters because we're going to be using a bigger weapon. For this one, we have a light weapon in the Scimitar, but in this case, we could actually throw Stormblade on it, which is awesome. Gives us some ranged power as well. And of course, using that guard counter, which takes a second to get used to, for sure. It took me a second to learn again, but 3 hits ultimately for most bosses is going to give you a posture break. And once you get that posture break, take in a critical hit and go back to guarding. Wait for the noise. It's pretty much a prompt. And then follow up with your charge attack for your guard counter. Ultimately, they end up for really reliable builds too, because you have a shield to block everything, and then you have the ability to use the guard counter for decent damage. It's not going to be amazing with the Scimitar in this case, but it's decent enough. And the bigger deal is getting the poise damage, getting those extra hits in where you can just build up posture damage at pretty much a higher level with guard counters than you would normally. And you can easily swing back around too, from like basically go from blocking to getting in that charge hit real quick and back to blocking. It's not that hard to do, especially with this weapon, because we have a really light weapon. I think guard counters as well as parries too give you the most rewarding playstyle. When you're able to parry something, a long time ago, a while back, a couple months ago, not a long time ago, I learned how to parry Concert Radon, and it was really rewarding. It took me hours to learn it, but once I was able to learn it, it was so much fun. And learning guard counters again here, yeah, I got beat up a little bit, but it's rewarding. It's another rewarding playstyle. If you like that kind of playstyle, or if you've never tried a guard counter build or a parry build, try them out, because you may find it to be some of the best experiences with a build you'll ever have when you run something like this. We have the Keen Scimitar plus 25 preferably, Brass Shield plus 25 preferably, Any Silver Buffs. You can check out our armor set there. We have the Curved Sword Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Axe Talisman, Great Shield Talisman, Spike Crack Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 30 Endurance, 16 Strength, 70 Dexterity, 25 Faith, and then we are using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength for our buffs, and once again, I think for most of these, we hit 51 poise too. And the next one up here is an all-faith caster build. I decided to do a base build for an all-faith caster as well as an all-intelligence caster in this video. That's going to be the next one, because people are always looking for what to do as an all-caster build. It's one of the most common things that I see in comments, people asking that basically there's not enough builds out there for just running an all-caster build. I think people like the weapons in Elden Ring. There's some really cool Ashes of War. In this case, we're using all different types of fire incantations, and then we're using offhand seals to boost them, and we've got some great stats too. Let's jump into equipment. Erdtree Seal is going to be in your main hand, and then in your offhand, you're going to use whatever seal you need to boost the specific incantation. We have part of the Rakshasa set on and the Veteran's Armor. We have the Fire Scorpion Charm, Godfrey Icon. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman. We have Phlox Canvas Talisman. And then we have the Flame tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 28 Endurance, 15 Strength, 15 Dexterity. We have 80 Faith for this build. We're using Golden Vow and Hellish Rebury for our buffs, Black Flame, Scouring Black Flame, Rain of Fire, and Burn of Flame for this build. This is a lot of fire damage in this one. And the next one up here, we have an all-intelligence caster. Now, I know technically Night Comet's better, but it's used a lot and it's going to appear in my video tomorrow, so I chose to use Comet for this, Glintstone Ice Crag, and give you kind of a base build to use for an intelligence caster that could do a lot of damage. This will allow you to have a lot of intelligence and enough faith to do some buffs too. But mainly, we're going to be using Lucette Staff and the Jellyfish Shield to take advantage of the higher scaling Lucette Staff has. Now, it's a little costly FP-wise, even with a decent amount of FP that we have here. Comet's going to be really costly because I think everything costs a little bit more with Lucette Staff, but you get higher scaling and you only have to focus on one stat, Intelligence, unlike some of the other seals like the Prince of Death Staff, which has really high scaling, but you'd have to get to like 60 Faith and 60 Intelligence to really beat out Lucette Staff, probably even higher than that. I meant staffs, not seals. I was thinking of the Golden Order seal for a second, which is very similar in terms of the Prince of Death staff. They're very similar in that regard. You kind of need high intelligence, though, is my point, and high faith. In this case, we've just got a little bit of faith and a lot of intelligence. So Lucette staff is going to be best here, even if it costs a little bit more FP. You can see the damage is quite good. We got in Frost build up at the end. We got a lot of damage with Comet. This is a good INT build. Let's jump into equipment and stats. And we have Lucette's Glintstone Staff plus 10. We have the Jellyfish Shield, any seal for buffs. Part of Rakshasa set on and a random Helmon. We have the Magic Scorpion Charm, Godfrey Icon, Graven Mask Talisman. We have the Cerulean Amber Medallion plus 3, Bloodsucking Crack tier, Magic tier. Let's jump into stats. And we have 50 Vigor, 21 Mind, 20 Endurance, 20 Strength, 14 Dexterity, 70 Intelligence. We have 25 Faith here. And then we are using Golden Vow, Blessings Boon, Comet, Glintstone Ice Crag. We have Terra Magica, and then pretty much any other spells you want will work with this build. And last up, we have my favorite one on here, and that is a Black Knight cosplay build. The Black Steel Great Hammer is a lot of fun to use, but it has a special effect when you use it for guard counters. And we have the Black Steel Great Shield as well, going with the full Black Knight set here too. And this is going to be one of those builds that's really rewarding in terms of the guard counter damage. And of course, for normal bosses, you'll get in some poise damage as well, but since this boss specifically acts like an NPC invader, you cannot break his poise as far as I know. It took me a second to pay attention to my stamina bar, and of course pay attention to that sound that you get for guard counter and all that. It does take a minute to get used to for sure, but ultimately, doing these two guard counter builds reminded me, as I mentioned before, how rewarding they are, and this one especially because it has a cool effect on guard counters that leaves holy damage on the ground, and in some cases here you can see it actually stuns the enemy, the boss, for a second. I took a critical hit there. That was my mistake. I wasn't paying attention to my stamina. But yeah, it took a minute to learn guard counters again. Just like every time I go in and try to parry anything, it takes a second to learn it again. But eventually you'll get it. And again, rewarding playstyle, does a decent amount of damage too. And for bigger bosses, of course, you'll be able to break them as well with 3 or 4 guard counter hits. The biggest thing though with the Black Steel Great Hammer is having that special guard counter effect. This is what the Black Knights use when you're fighting against them. If you notice when you hit them, they do this a lot. And in this case, you can do it every time when you use the guard counter. The Ash of War in the weapon itself is pretty good as well. It's a good strength faith weapon. It doesn't have high faith scaling though, so if you're going to pump extra points into it, pump more into strength. It definitely leans more strength. And then of course faith as a secondary. But yeah, heavily into the physical damage with this weapon. Second here, we're going to go over equipment, stats, everything you need to know for a Black Knight build. And we have the Black Steel Great Hammer plus 25 preferably, Black Steel Great Shield plus 25 preferably, Black Knight Armor set on, any seal for buffs, Curved Sword Talisman, Arsenal Charm plus 1 or Great Jar's Arsenal, Axe Talisman, Great Shield Talisman, Spike Crack tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 18 Mind, 40 Endurance, 55 Strength, we have 13 Dexterity, 35 Faith, And then for our buffs, we're going to be using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. This is a decent armor set for defense, and it gives you 60 poise too. And thanks for watching this one. Thanks for tuning into my top 8 fun builds to try. These were pretty much all build requests from you guys, and keep them coming because honestly, they've been a lot of fun to make these builds. Be sure to catch my video that's going to be after this one. It should be the day after this one. That's going to be a New Game Plus 7 build list. There's going to be a lot of stuff on there to keep you alive. New Game Plus 7 is really hard in the DLC, especially with DLC Plus as well. Definitely check that one out. Be sure to sub if you want to see more Elden Ring content, and I will catch you in the next video.